This summer, Instacart presents famous summer flavors coming to your front door. Or pool. Or hotel.
Your grocery delivery has arrived, sir.
That was faster than room service.
No violins in the lobby.
Oh, seriously? Anyway, sit back, relax, and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Starring your favorite snacks, drinks, and more. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Rated H for hungry audiences. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, a music podcast where we chat to a new guest each week, talk about their life and creative endeavours, and talk to them about some of the music they love. Our show works by chatting to our guests about music, their songwriting techniques, and occasionally getting them to make you a playlist of the songs they love. Welcome to episode 195. I'm your host, Simon Fink. Our guest today is Ruby Gill. The South African-born, Australian-based singer and songwriter recently released her gorgeous debut record entitled I'm Gonna Die With This Frown on My Face. In today's episode, we're speaking with Ruby about how this brilliant record came to be, her songwriting craft, and her love of Missy Higgins. Here we go. Our guest today is a brilliant singer and songwriter based in Naarm, Melbourne. Having moved to Australia from Johannesburg 6 years ago to pursue music, she's already built a steady following of fans with her insightful lyrics and witty observations. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Ruby Gill. Hello, how are we?
Hi, Simon. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Where are you joining us from today?
This is my lounge room in Brunswick on Orangery country.
Beautiful. I'm actually just admiring that lovely bookcase of yours behind you. There seems to be quite a decent amount of books up there.
There are. I keep trying to find more because it annoys me that not all the rows are finished. It just really it makes me angry. But that bookcase, I have had to move around this house about once a week because I can't figure out where it's supposed to go. Like in the space. But I think I've figured it out. I think that's where it's meant to live. So thank you for validating that.
Of course. Are you someone who, I know I have some friends who like to organise their books by colour. Some will do it by title, some will do it by author. Some just do it on, like the chronology of when they bought the books or they came into their lives. What's the way, is there any organisation to the bookshelf?
That is a good one. But mine's probably half by colour. And then also by which ones I want to take out most often. So I just make sure that there's like a poetry section or whatever and I can access it easily.
I think that's always a good one as well. The not necessarily classics defined by the store or by the library, but your own classics, the go-tos, if you will.
Definitely, yeah.
Ruby, we are here today talking about your brilliant debut record, I'm Gonna Die With This Frown on My Face. Firstly, congratulations. The record has been out for a little while now, but it is absolutely stunning. So, firstly, congratulations on this.
Thanks, Simon. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's been about 3 weeks or so now, which is not that long, but feels long enough that I kind of keep forgetting that it's happened. So it's nice whenever people remind me that it's out and that, they've listened and connected, then I feel really grateful for that. So that's nice.
Well, I don't think that I'm alone in the way that I feel about this record. From all accounts that I've kind of seen, this seems to be winning hearts, or breaking hearts, winning hearts, both maybe across the world. You seem to be getting a lot of acclaim everywhere. How are you, as you mentioned, it's only been 3 weeks. How are you feeling with the record being out and finally having these songs out in the public?
Yeah, it's been a really beautiful sense of release. I think there's a lot of build up over the past, 10 years of writing those songs and then 3 years of sitting on the recordings since we were in studio, because we just put them in a Dropbox and then didn't do anything for a while. So there's definitely a long build up that I'm quite glad to be on the other end of, and to just have this project and this chapter closed, and a sense of freedom that brings is really lovely. But that's just my little internal journey. I think in terms of reception and like having people listen to it, which is just such a strange, beautiful thing, it's been really nice to suddenly be getting people's opinions on what those songs mean and what I talk, like their interpretation of what I talk about and what I am and what I stand for and whatever, which obviously is not always correct and doesn't always match my knowledge of the truth of that, but is such a magical exchange in terms of hearing people's perceptions and where it sits with them and where it lands in their bodies and in their lives. And I've found that really moving and exciting to just be able to experience music in this communal exchange of meaning, which is just so cool.
100%. I think it's one of the more interesting things when I am talking to artists, I guess, listening to the way that songs have been interpreted by fans and by people, and sometimes that they might reveal something that you weren't even aware of, that now looking back it's there, and then sometimes that people are so far off the money that cannot be further from the truth.
Absolutely.
Have you had any that's kind of stood out? Obviously we're not going to dox anyone or give away any personal names, but has there been an interpretation that someone's come up to you so far with and you've just been thinking that could not be further from the original intent of the song?
Yeah, nothing like wildly drastic, but there's a few songs where there's one on the album called Calling Out, which is a song I kind of wrote about bird watching. And I don't really mention bird watching specifically in that song, but I was writing it about this sense of being in these forests and desperate to see the bird and to name the bird and to like have this visual connection with the bird, but only ever hearing it and only ever being able to notice the sound and then have to trust that the bird was there and trust that that presence was alive and that everybody is alive and nature is alive around me, even if I can't see it and name it all the time. But when I wrote that song, I just sort of let that feeling evolve, and I just listed random things that feeling was attached to in me, missing people, trying to let go of things, trying to bridge distances, just lots of whatever. And it didn't have a sort of narrative arc for me. It was just like throwing paint at the walls and see what sticks. But someone wrote a very specific review the other day about what that song was about, and they'd crafted an entire story out of like me meeting somebody, falling in love with them as a friend, having to end the friendship, having to then process the end of this friendship in this specific way. And I was just like, firstly, I don't have any friends, but secondly, absolutely not. That's not what it's about. But it's so great that those feelings clearly evoked for them a sense of losing friendship and a sense of having to process grief of someone intimate. I don't know. It was just cool to see how that landed, very far away from my birdwatching nerdery.
It is the power of music. It's the fact that it can open or unlock something in someone else that you've never even met, that they weren't aware of or that you weren't aware of. But it's one of those little lovely mysteries, if you will.
Totally, yeah.
The record, as well as bird watching, does touch on a kind of a range of subjects. There's I do believe that there's different facets of relationships, whether that might be the good aspect, the interesting aspect, or the what am I doing aspect. I know that it touches on border security, it touches on capitalism, it touches on a few different bits and pieces, and I'm curious, when you sit down to write and compose and create, do you ever know what the song is going to be fully or what it's about when you set out to write it? Or is it something that reveals itself as you're kind of midway through that process?
Good question. I think it happens both ways for me. Sometimes I am aware that there is something that I'm not getting to the bottom of intellectually or in my processing of a difficult thing or whatever, and I am lucky to know that singing about it and letting that sort of musical process happen often helps me express to myself the true feeling, and helps me get to the end of it. So I often go in with like a question to myself of why is this thing fucking you up, or what exactly is the point you're trying to make, and then I let the song sort of tell me the answer to that question. So that is sort of going in with an agenda, but I also am fascinated by how the brain creates a narrative out of randomness. So sometimes I go in with like very obscure thoughts of themes or images I'd like to explore. A recent song I wrote, which is not on the album, which is not helpful to this interview, but hey, I had these words of like ostriches and church pews and sound engineering, or I had this sort of word cloud of things that my brain was just giving to me, but I had no sort of cognitive link between them. And then I sang for maybe 3 hours and just let those thoughts sort of fall into the page. And I ended up processing an incredibly traumatic event that had happened at church when I was a teenager in South Africa, which is the home of ostriches. And like the bird had very little to do with the church event, and the sound engineer was just a sort of person in the periphery. But it was like my brain had connected those dots to help me process something that was incredibly repressed inside me. And I hadn't gone in wanting to even think about that thing or that trauma. So sometimes I just let the pieces fall, and they seem to always fall in a place that has meaning, maybe because we're just obsessed, or I am obsessed with creating meaning and figuring things out. So my brain is just like, well, I don't know what you've given me, but we're going to have to work with it and process something. So here it is. So I love both approaches, and I find both very moving and productive in terms of creating little songs.
I find that fascinating, and I kind of loved it. One, that the brain is such an amazing way in how it works, but that's kind of that somewhere in you that was telling you these things need to be addressed, spoken about, whatever, and that it's come out in the music. So whenever that track does come out, as you mentioned, not on this album, but I look forward to any future release that does include that track.
Thanks, Simon.
The music on this, the lyrics on this record are absolutely incredible. I think it is one of the many brilliant talents of yourself. It's so incredibly dense. And I know that we just spoke about kind of where these songs come from. I'm curious when you realised that you wanted to be a lyricist and a songwriter. I think if I've done my research correctly, you started playing piano around 4 or 5, and curious where songwriting or poetry, as you mentioned before, kind of came into it.
Yeah, and I think that's probably important to note, is that I think I've always been a writer before being a songwriter. I mean, my day job is as a writer, and I've always wanted to be a poet, and I probably wanted to publish writing before I ever wanted to be a musician. That hasn't happened really yet, but I think from a very young age I was obsessed with language and with words, and I was writing poems for my school teachers maybe like year 2 or year 1. My mum has a little stack of poems. The one is just like pink flamingos flying high, lighting up the bright blue sky. And then I wrote it again as a spoonerism. So it said, think flamingos, high fly. You know what I mean? Like, just swapped all the letters around, and I thought that was fucking hilarious as a 7-year-old. But I was just obsessed with how words could take shape and what they could, elicit for people. And I studied linguistics at uni, and I grew up in this incredibly multilingual world within my family and within my friendship groups and just society in general. So I think, language has been the basis of how I process and express my surroundings, and poetry for me has been the most succinct, direct way of getting to the bottom of those stories and emotions. And I'm always evolving in how I write it, but I am just always in awe of how other people, do it. And I could read poetry back to front all day. I think it's an incredibly mystical, special tool.
I would 100% agree with that. I think that music is incredible and lovely, and lyrics sometimes can be repetitive, sometimes can be I guess they can be whatever the artist wants them to be, but there is power in some incredibly literary-based songs, or whatever you kind of want to refer to. There is a magic in them, yeah. There is one kind of, if we're going with the magic aspect of it, there is one kind of magic power I feel that you have, which I'd love to discuss, which is there does appear to be you do appear to have a sense of humour within these songs, whether it be more self-effacing than kind of jokey, whatever it may be. I'd love to know how you balance the kind of dark humour that you have in the songs without making it too. We're not writing novelty songs. We're not. You're not the next Weird Al Yankovic, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Where is that line when you're trying to inject that little bit of, I guess, personality into the songs?
Yeah, I wish I knew the answer to that question, but I guess that's part of the magic of it. I think it's my personality, and people come to my shows and often leave the shows saying, are you a stand-up comedian in your spare time? And I'm like, I was not trying to be funny. I was just trying to tell you all my sad stories, and somehow you laughed at me. But I think it's just because...
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be.
Okay, you can do this.
I know. Carvana makes it so convenient to sell your car. It's just hard to let go. My car and I have been through so much together.
But look, you already have a great offer from Carvana. That was fast.
Well, I know my license plate and VIN by heart, and those questions were easy.
You're almost there. Now to just accept the offer and schedule a pickup or drop-off.
How'd you do it? How are you so strong in letting go of your car?
Well, I already made up my mind, and Carvana's so easy.
Yeah, true. And sold.
Go to Carvana.com to sell your car the convenient way.
I'm okay with being awkward, and I'm okay with being completely who I am, which is a privilege, I think, and something I've worked really hard on. And the more in tune with myself I am, and the more okay I am with people thinking I'm losing my mind, the lighter that touch is for me, and I'm allowed to process these really fucked up things with a smile, because that is how I am feeling, and it is the only way I know how to hold those traumas or hold those just confusing things inside me, is to maybe have a little toxic coping mechanism of laughing them off gently at the end of the sentence and just being like, this is okay, this is part of the human condition and the process that we all go through. So I'm not trying to be funny, which I guess is why it doesn't come across as a novelty comedy song, thank God. I'm just trying to express quite honestly the ridiculous, absurd thing that's going on inside me. And I think people are relieved by that amidst processing big feelings. So it comes across as witty and humorous because it's a sort of light amongst all the shade, which is magic.
I would agree with that. I think it's almost like a little bit of a comfort thing in a way, both for the listener and for yourself. We know that although the song might be serious, that you're okay, that it's not all fully serious, and that they're okay as well. It is like a little kind of blanket, if you will, which that was a terrible segue, so I apologise. I wanted to be a little bit selfish and ask about one of my favourite tracks on the record and kind of where the catalyst of that came from and where it began. It is the opening track of the record, I Forgot to Be Profound Today. There is something about that track that I just... it's a bold way to start a record, but I absolutely love it. And I was just wondering, whether you would be okay to talk about that track.
Absolutely. I mean, it's in the title, I guess. I was feeling a lot of... I always feel a lot of pressure to be profound or eloquent or concise and interesting every day, especially because my job is as a writer and as a creative, and literally I'm being paid to output creative, profound words every day. But also I was noticing in that extending into my relationships and the people closest to me feeling like I wasn't profound enough or interesting enough to be of worth, which is a strange symptom, I guess, of just having this pressure put on you every day to be good and to be present and functional in this strange society. And I was just exhausted by it. So that song was me sort of trying to, I guess, forgive myself for not being very interesting all the time and acknowledge that it's impossible and hilarious that I thought I could ever do that, but also critique potentially the system that weighs us down in that way, and the blanket that sort of, I don't know, the blanket for me is two things. It's a sense that we all need to come together and sort of warm ourselves up as a society and not be so cold and pressured and dysfunctional, but also this sense of weight weighing on us as people and as individuals and as workers and as anything. And just releasing myself from the thought that I had to be singing in tune every day, showing up with a smile on my face. I don't need to do that because it's impossible. And in releasing that from me, I think other people get to release that from them too. And then we can all just engage as animals and humans and not little robots conditioned to be interesting every day.
I love that. And I think that, there is, maybe that's what I really liked about it. There was comfort in, I guess, just allowing to exist and not have to try and, as mentioned, be profound. So, thank you very much for indulging me with that one. You yourself, you only recently, within the last 6 years or so, relocated to Melbourne, as you mentioned before, originally from Johannesburg. What was it about Australia and Melbourne that kind of attracted you to come over here and play music here?
I think there were a few things. The musicians I respected came from here at the time. So Missy Higgins and Kate Miller-Heidke, my father loved them and used to just play me little bootleg YouTube clips he'd found. And we didn't really know who they were, but it was just kind of like, oh, these people are playing piano-y, lyrical masterpieces, and they're funny and they're interesting, and maybe that's where I could make the things that I want to make. So a sense of, following in people's footsteps, but also just learning about how many venues there were and how, functional the cities were to live in and to explore alone this strange world of live music and playing and just wanting to be challenged and go out every night and see someone else. And I just hadn't grown up in that kind of environment. I didn't do a lot of watching and a lot of listening. So a bit of that. And then also I just kind of Googled nature and what it would look like and what it would feel like and what birds are here, and was just astonished at like the fact that more than 90% of the species in this country are endemic to this land. Like they don't exist anywhere else in the world. And if you want to experience them and meet them and be part of this community, you've got to be here. So I just was like, well, maybe I'll come on an adventure. But then I never left. So I can't exactly explain why I never left. But I just felt, I felt held by this place. And that is a great privilege. A lot of people do not get to feel held by any place, including this one. And I felt able to just walk out into the bush on my own and come back and write a song and sing it the next day. And that is a strange, lucky thing that a lot of places don't offer. So I think that's why I landed here in the end.
That's absolutely beautiful. If and I know it's always such a difficult kind of thing to ask. If I was to say, is there a particular Missy Higgins track or album that you would put forward as your favourite? Is it something you'd be able to answer, or have I unfairly asked that?
No. I think it's obviously unfair, but I remember falling in love with her via The Sound of White, which is that piano song about grief, I guess. And it was also via a live version of it. So it was just watching her play it as well that made me just be like, oh, yeah, this is honesty and it's beautiful and it makes me feel things. So that song for me will always be how I picture her, but everything's great.
That is a classic choice. I think you've done an excellent job in picking that track. You are taking the record out on an East Coast tour, I believe, starting, if I look at the time and date, next week, and then across October, I think you're going to Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, a little bit of back and forth. How are you feeling about those shows?
I'm really excited. I have a really beautiful band and people playing with me, which is so special because it feels like we're having fun and we're doing it as a community and it's not just a scary solo thing. So there's a sense of actually just wanting to hang out and be on the road together, which is nice. But also, I guess these songs are quite old for me now. I know they've only just come out, but it's taken me that playing them live again has helped me reconnect with them. And I'm quite excited to play them on this tour and respect them for what they are and sort of be back in that, that little bubble of that album in a really beautiful new way and just appreciate it all for what it is. So I feel really lucky that we get to do this in between jobs. Most of the gigs are on weekends to accommodate my very busy schedule, but it'll be a beautiful 2 months of popping out into the world.
I know that there's a lot of people excited to see you on the road. A number of people have been flagging the gigs to us here, even though we're based in Adelaide, and I know that there's currently not an Adelaide date, but I know that some friends in the East Coast have been flagging it, so I know that there's a lot of excitement around those. One thing you just mentioned a second ago, you obviously have been living with these songs for a while and now getting back to them. Have you found that now that you're revisiting, prepping for tour, getting tour ready, that I guess has any song changed its meaning or taken on a different kind of form with that time or that hindsight away from it?
Yeah, there's one song in particular that comes to mind called Borderlines, which I originally wrote about being on a bridging visa. And when you're on a bridging visa here, you're not allowed to travel unless they approve your dates. So I was trying to go home back to South Africa because my grandmother had died, and I wouldn't be allowed to get back in because it was on the brink of them making a decision or whatever. So I wasn't allowed to travel. And there's just this sense of being in between and not having a home and not having a place to, and it was years on that bridging visa for me, and obviously for some people so much longer. So I wrote that song about that bureaucratic nonsense. But then over the course of the pandemic, none of us were allowed to move, and none of us were allowed to travel to see the people we loved or the places that had raised us. And I, in particular, couldn't leave Australia no matter what happened to my family if I ever wanted to come back, because they'd put a stop on temporary visa holders coming back in and stuff. So that song just suddenly became this like deeply relevant and alive version of itself during the pandemic. And now when I sing it, I don't particularly think back to early stages of immigration. I think back to still the difficulty of this time and being away from people during all of this trauma, and not being able to help your parents when things were going wrong, and not being able to, so yeah, it's amazing that a song can retain such truth even in completely different circumstances.
As we were discussing earlier, it's almost like it kind of takes on something else for that other person or that other whatever it may be. And obviously with this one, it's kind of gone from applicable to yourself and a handful of people to quite a lot of people. So I imagine there's a lot of people connecting with that track as well.
Yeah.
Ruby, usually we would ask our guests what they're currently listening to. Is there anything at the moment that for yourself is currently on high rotation?
I've just discovered Katie Kirby. I couldn't actually tell you where they're from, but it's a green album cover, and I just love how clever it is. There's such interesting production and beautiful lyrics. There's a song about holding someone on your tongue like a peppermint. It's called Peppermint, and it's just this sense of like gently holding someone or a thought or something. Anyway, just really smart and clever, and makes me kind of dance in the shower, which is nice. It's got everything an album could ever want.
That sounds like a fantastic choice. I would definitely check that out, and I'll put it in the podcast show notes along with where people can find your record to buy and the tickets for the tour that is happening next week, as we mentioned.
Awesome.
Ruby, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Congratulations again on I'm Going to Die with This Frown on My Face. But yes, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for having me.
And that's our show. A massive thank you to Ruby Gill for her time. I'm Gonna Die with This Frown on My Face is out now, and we've left links in the show notes if you'd like to buy the vinyl or see her on tour. We also want to give a huge shout out to Alyse at Aanthologies for helping out with today's interview. If you like this show, please subscribe wherever you get your pods and stay up to date when new episodes are released. We release new shows each Wednesday and Friday morning, and we now have a Patreon, which you can find within the show notes of this episode. You can follow the playlist profile on Spotify, and you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Until next week, cheers.